welcome back to Big Pretty Man, a channel for the extra large man who wants to live his life large and in charge. I'm your host, Timothy Big Pretty Crowe. I'm a wardrobe and lifestyle consultant for the extra large man. Okay, folks, if you've been a follower of my channel, you know that back in June when I got married, my good pal from across the pond, Ash the Chap Jones, came to be my best man, and we decided while he was here that we would interview each other and upload them to each of our channels. And we really enjoyed doing that, and it got such a great response from our subscribers on both channels that we thought it might be a good idea to do a Zoom video and collaborate where we would answer any questions that our subscribers may have. So that's what we did. And I'm going to go ahead and play it for you. You'll also be able to find this on Ash's channel as well sometime in the near future. Okay, so come on, Ash. Let's do this thing.
And wow, recording is in progress. So I'll probably cut it about and get it sorted out too. So Tim, we've had some people who have sent us some questions, desperately in need of some help on their journey to Chap Nirvana. And I think we should just, throw these out there and get our views out there to help these young or people of any age who are needing this help. So the first one we get is somebody called Ayanda, who says, "Hi, Ash and Tim. My name is Ayanda, and I have a question about dressing up in a dress-down world. Nowadays, if you make an effort to even look remotely good, you get comments like, 'Are you going to court? Whose wedding is it?' etc. As a man in my 40s, these comments won't bother me as I dress for my age, and I come from an era where dressing up was not criticised. The question is, how do we encourage young people like my son, who is a teenager and who enjoys suits and menswear, when society beats it out of them? How do we bring back the standard we once had?" So, I mean, the question that Ayanda is posing us here is, how do we deal? I'm gonna throw this to you. How do you deal with it when people make negative comments about the way that you're dressed?
Well, I've dealt with that as well on a few occasions. Not only just so much negative, but people actually not being used to you being around someone who is well dressed. We're living such, as he said, a dress down world that whenever we see anyone dressed up, we think that they are going to court or they're going to something special or we think there's something up. I know I've been accused at my work saying, "Oh, you're trying to get a raise, you're trying to get the boss's job." No, I'm just dressing. I just want to dress like a decent human being, appropriate at work. And what I say to that is, my answer is just to keep doing it, because here's the thing: by you dressing that way, you are the standard because you've stepped it up. So you are the standard. All of them, when everyone's dressed down and you're dressed up, you're the standard. If you keep doing it, especially if you're around the same people over and over again, you might start seeing people. You're going to get compliments. You're going to intimidate some, but you're going to see some of those other people start dressing up a little bit too, just a little. Maybe you'll see a jacket suddenly come on. Maybe you'll start seeing a tie here and there, better shoes, so some slacks instead of jeans. You would be surprised how you'll see that happen both consciously and unconsciously with people. But yeah, it's something that you need, just keep doing it. And I tell you what, I get far more compliments than insults. And people that are they're intimidated. They are intimidated. They feel underdressed next to you, so they have to bring it down somehow. Don't let it. You're already setting a step above them. Stay that way.
Absolutely.
I can vouch.
I can vouch for the fact that you get many compliments, because when I came to visit you in Philadelphia last year and we walked around the streets, numerous people actually stopped you to make comments in the streets about the way you were dressed. So it's true. And I think you're absolutely right. The reality is people who would go to the extent of making a negative comment about the way that you're dressed, they probably feel threatened, because they probably do think that you're going for the boss's job, or you've got a better chance with the ladies in the typing pool, stereotyping there, but you know what I mean.
You
And
do. You actually do.
and they are saying that because they're hoping that it will have a negative impact on you, that you're going to lower your tone, the way that you're dressed, and they will reassert themselves as the dominant person. But I think you're right. The thing to do is stay with your principles, dress to the standard that you want to, and to use a British term, bollocks to them.
Bollocks to them. Exactly.
Okay, good
Fully
answer.
agree.
Good answer. Well, I got another question here. Let's have a look. What have I got? Okay. Right. This is a good one. This is from Reg, who says, as somebody of below average height and above average weight, despite having access to good tailors, I've been hesitant to invest in a double-breasted suit. I've toyed with the idea of a 4-button double-breasted suit, but have yet to pull the trigger. I don't think I have any glaring gaps in my single-breasted wardrobe, but is my fear of a double-breasted suit that will look unflattering upon my stature unfounded? What do you think of double-breasted for somebody who's perhaps of lower height but broader stature?
What we say, vertically handicapped and horizontally blessed. Yes. Well, and of course, I'm a person of that stature. I'm more built for pleasure than speed. So, and my answer to that, and I am the guy to ask that question. Absolutely, get a double-breasted suit. Actually, in truth, a double-breasted suit is better than a single-breasted suit for a heavy-set man because of the lap over. Especially if you're doing, as I've said in my videos, wear your pants to your true waist. And then at that point, it frees up. It keeps you in a more rectangular shape rather than a round shape. And believe actually, a double vested suit is going to help that. It's going to give you more of that streamlined look. I've done it. I only have a few double breasted suits myself. I rarely wear them just because they're rather heavy material. But absolutely, I would recommend it if you can get it, wear it. You will actually find that you look much better.
Yeah, I think the beauty of a double-breasted suit, as you say, I mean, it creates the illusion of the broader shoulders and the tapering at the waist, doesn't it? So it can be,
Exactly.
regardless of your stature, it's going to make you give you that more masculine appearance. And there's
Yeah,
something.
the triangular shape, that actually helps to square your shoulders. One thing I would note is to make sure that when you get it tailored, make sure that the shoulders are just a little wider than normal, rather than the taper at the shoulders. A little bit of that standout is going to give you more of that triangular look. And actually, at that point, the double breast is definitely going to help that look. So you're going for a triangle, and that'll help.
Yeah, there's something you said there, Tim, which I'm not sure of, because you said if you make sure your trousers go to your true waist. And the reason I'm going to press you on that is because somebody else has written in here, a chap called It's Zeal, who says, can I have some style advice for people with a belly? So I think he means, what's the better, way to wear your trousers would be what I take from that. And so what do you mean by a true waist?
Here's the problem, and I've talked to this before, and is when men get heavier and you start to get the beer gut, the stomach, it starts to become there's a whole psychological bag that goes with this, by the way, because your true waist is now wider than what it was before. So people, heavyset guys generally want to be in some denial and some laziness. They don't want to buy new clothes. So what do? You stick the pants under the belly. It's a horrible look. It is just the worst thing you can do because that's not your waist. You're getting down on your hips, and that belly is hanging over. So that also means that the crack of your hind end is going to show. So now you've got this belly protruding over top of your pant. And also, it's putting you in denial that you'll no longer fit in this size. And I dealt with that when I used to work in men's clothing. These men will come in and say, I'm a 38 waist. I'm like, try a 44, buddy. And they're shoving it under, and they walk out with these 38 pants, and that's denial. And the longer, and these things help you in denial. Same thing with jogging pants. I know you and I had spoken before. You saying, we see heavyset guys in a jogging suit, and it just seems so, so contrary. Well, there's a reason they do that, and that is because most of the stores only carry men's, the main stores, around here be J.C. Penney or Macy's or any of those, are going to carry pants only to about a size 40. You might find a 42. I'm going by American measurements, of course.
Yeah.
You might find a 42 here and there, but you're not going to have a lot of choices. So at that point, if you get past that, you're going to have to go to a specialty store, to a big and tall store, DXL or big and tall or king size. And that's a step most men don't want to do, because they don't want to confront that. That's a failure in some way. So what do? They go to the one size fits all jogging suit. So that's the reason you see it. When you see big guys in the jogging suit, it's not because they're doing sports. It's because they don't want to admit that they're getting fatter. And, and you look horrible, so, and the belt, the same thing with the belt, the pants under the belly, you got to have a wake up call. You look much better if you get pants that fit you to your true waist. Your true waist is here, just almost in line with your belly button.
Yeah.
That is your true waist, right where the top of your hip, above your pelvis. So that is your true waist. Now, older men want to get it way up here under the breast. No, you see that for the old guys. No, I'm talking about when you put your hands on your hips, that is your waist. It's almost in line with the navel. Get your pants up to your navel.
There we go.
And it will look much better. Nobody wants to see your belly sticking over the top, and you're not fooling anybody.
And if nothing else,
you actually might fool somebody if you get it up to the right up to your waist, and you'll look a lot better.
I imagine it's a lot more comfortable as well, which is an important factor with any clothing, isn't it?
Yes. It also keeps your pants from falling down, showing the crack of your ass, excuse my language, and that, as I call it, the front butt, your stomach sticking out the bottom, looks like somebody's tying in.
That's not pretty.
So.
Okay, we got another question, and this bit from both of us here. It's from Dave Porter, who says, "Gentlemen, do you see any trends in either the United States or the United Kingdom that cause you to believe that we are becoming more sartorial in our dress? Where are we headed?" Well, I'll start this one off, because are we getting more sartorial? Well, I mean, truth is, I think we are. I've always thought that this trend of dressing hyper casually would only take us so far, and once you hit rock bottom, you tend to bounce upwards. You can't get any more casual than the way people have been dressing in the last few years. This is my view anyway, what I see locally. And I've just noticed recently, maybe it's been the end of the pandemic, people going back to the workplace, maybe, I don't know, just they're fed up of dressing in sweatpants and things like that. But I've seen more people dressing up. I see figures in the newspapers about men's clothing sales improving. And one thing I noticed about 2 weeks ago, Prada, in their, I don't know whether it was a Paris or Milan Fashion Week or whatever, but their catwalk show featured men in, pretty eccentric suits. But it was the first time that the suited look had been on the catwalk for quite some time. So I think there are green shoots. But what would you say, Tim? What's it like in the States?
Actually, I was back over the holidays. I don't go to the malls very often. But I was in the malls doing the Christmas shopping like everyone else. And I was really paying attention to the clothing shops. Now, most of those I can't shop at, except for like ties and things like that. So I don't pay a lot of attention to the big main brand stores in a mall. But I was looking this last time, and I'm just like disgusted at how these huge designer companies are, you walk by the display window, and every single thing in the display window, every mannequin is sweatpants, sweat clothes. It's sports, it's workout clothes. And I'm like, number one, I feel like what a ripoff. I've got you might as well just go to a sporting goods store and buy Champion sweats. It's the same thing. But the fact that they're considered this designer clothing, I was shocked. So, but I'm like, if I see that, and I'm like, I was so appalled. But at the same time, I'm like you. If I'm watching people, I am starting to see a little bit more of a style coming back in, a little bit more of a dressy style. And one thing I would always note is whenever I dress that way, I always dress that way. As you said, I get compliments. I get people will come up to you. Why? Because I'm not dressed like I just come from the gym, which everybody in the mall looks like they just come from a marathon run. You know?
Well,
So
in a way, it's almost a little bit sad because as you're a very intentionally well-dressed man, and when I go out, I tend to dress smartly as well. And you get this reaction from people, don't you? You get
yeah.
improved service when you go into shops. If you go to a restaurant, you get seated at a better seat. People suddenly start calling you sir all the time when you're dressed well. When everybody
It
starts dressing
commands a
well,
certain respect.
yeah, but when
It
people
does.
start dressing well again, it won't feel like a superpower anymore, being a well-dressed man. So in a way, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
me and you had said, and we was here, said we kind of hope that everybody don't start dressing right. We lose every damn edge we got.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
But
Okay.
I even give a quick example. I went into a Best Buy over Christmas. I decided to buy a new phone, and while I was in there, I was waiting for everything to download. It took like an hour and a half. I'd stepped outside and came back in. As I was coming in, there was these two ladies going out, a mother and her daughter. They turned around and I come right back in the indoor. It's like, you look so good. So you were dressed so well. Can we get a picture with you? So I took pictures with them. So I'm like,
It's got to be the best.
I thought maybe they saw my channel. Apparently not. That's just because I was, and actually, I think I was wearing the same thing I'm wearing right now. Yeah,
It
I
goes to
was
show.
actually. Yeah.
It goes to
So
show the impact, doesn't it?
it does. I mean, when just a person who is dressed well, people want to take their picture with you like you're in a costume.
Yeah.
That says a lot right there.
It's
So
a sad indictment of the times in which we live, but we are style pioneers. We are taking people back to that, I think. Now
and as far as Americans, we swing back and forth. We get sick of something, we'll go completely the different direction.
yeah.
I say it's the disco effect. Everybody was crazy about disco in 1978. By 1980, everybody hated it, and they were going heavy metal. So we're going to be dressing down in pajamas and jogging suits. Suddenly, everybody will hate it, and they'll be in three-piece suits.
I
Watch
think
and
you're
see.
right. Yeah. Well, it starts off as nonconformity, doesn't it? Because people, when everybody was dressed in suits, they saw wearing casual clothing as their expression of nonconformity. Of course, now everybody's
Yes,
dressing like that. The nonconformity will be going back up the formal ladder. So
exactly.
it'll be interesting to see. I got a bit of a slightly different question here. This is from Al Kudud, and he says, "How do you approach chivalry these days?" Now that's quite a broad question. Um, how would you answer that? How would you what's your view on chivalry these days? Is it gone or does it still exist?
I think it exists more than people think. I mean, right now, because of social media and the internet and all of that and people's interaction communication, because it is one way blind, people feel a little too safe to be rude, to be nasty. But that's in the internet world. you know well, I think when you step out on the streets, there is still a place for chivalry. And how would I define chivalry? Well, chivalry is basically a code of honor. If you look it up, that's what it says: to be courteous, to be courteous, and to be honorable, and charitable. And I think that those are very much alive, both in older men and younger men. It may be coming out in a different way with younger men, but I do believe that it still exists. And if it doesn't exist, then we definitely need to bring it back, because when you're chivalrous, you're showing honor. And when you're showing honor, you're being responsible, and you're showing compassion within a community, within the world we live in. And that is something that will never completely go out of style, because we should never allow it to go out of style. And plus, it's just good manners. Living and playing well with others. The kindergarten rules. Play nice, and I think that chivalry is a part of that, and especially when it comes to men with women. I think that is something that, if Me Too and those movies showed, is that that type of bad behavior with men, just like a lot of things, like with police brutality and other thing, in this media age of cameras everywhere, and is not going to go unnoticed and ignored anymore. So I think there's a bigger need for chivalry towards women, and right now, even if it's forced, sometimes we have to learn a hard lesson. So it definitely is something that it both still exists and is going to have to exist in this future world.
Yeah,
That's what I think.
I'd go along with that. I mean, I obviously, like every, significant country, there's been a reduction in, visible or demonstrable chivalry that I've seen. I mean, when I was a young person, when I spoke to elder people, I treated them with respect as a matter of course. They didn't have to earn it. We assumed that we would be respectful just because of their age. I don't think
Exactly.
that's present anymore. I mean, young people are probably more independent and strong-willed than they've ever been, because I think they grow up faster because of their exposure to information in the world that we never had. Certainly, because
And I do agree with that. Yeah,
we're the same
that is
age.
a problem.
But I think the biggest thing with chivalry is it's down to us to, as parents, to ensure that our children grow up like that. And it's I know parents who allow their children to call them by their first name
Absolutely
in
not.
the home environment. And I mean, if you can't show chivalry to your own parents by calling them mum and dad, or whatever you choose to, whatever the habit is wherever you live, that's starting off without any chivalry, even in your home, towards the people who gave you life. So what chance has anybody else got?
I agree. And another thing about that is that, and a bad trend that is going on, which hurts chivalry, and just basically, really, chivalry is showing a respect and showing your own honor, your own morality, your own ethics. Is that there is such a sense, and because of mass media, because of the parenting styles of these last generation, is entitlement. People, we have a whole generation of people now that believe that the world literally owes them something, that they are all special, and the world owes them a living, and anything they do, it's okay because they have an excuse for it. When you are both Gen Xers, that didn't work. We know the world. The one thing I taught my kids, and I'll tell any young person: number one, nobody's special. If everybody was special, then that negates being special. You might be special to your family and your parents, and the world does not give a damn about you. It just does not. It will, and with that attitude, it's going to eat you alive.
Yeah.
And you're going to learn one way or another. And if your parents haven't taught you, promise you the world will. You are not entitled to anything in this life.
Yeah.
Period. None of us are.
Do you know what, Tim? We sound like a couple of old men here talking
We
about
are old
how
men,
young
and that's how
people,
we got to be old men.
the generations have failed us. They're not standing up to our level, But
That's
it is
right.
true. It is true. Anyway, I got another question, which is a bit more, shall we say, philosophical. This is from Santiagos Dominicus, and he says, "What historical figures inspire you?" Now, I know, as perhaps the viewers won't, that you are a professor of religious studies, so you've got quite a lot of deep learning in history and things like that. So, what, or am I at the wrong end of the spectrum? Is it going to be somebody much more modern who inspires you? What historical figures inspire you then?
Well, and it matters, it runs the gamut from present day to ancient, to more medieval times and ancient times. People I admire for different reasons. As far as, I've never been much for hero worship. I've never been one much for, somebody who being a huge role model, at least not on an overall scale for one person. But there are certain traits in people in the past and in the more recent past that I admire. Well, one I would say is someone who shows a tenacity and strength, but yet upholds their dignity. I think that's very hard to do.
Mm.
And another thing about this is, well, a lot of times with it's become a trend in the last few years to heroic figures in history is to find a flaw with them. We get that, with Churchill, his treatment of India and his very more imperial attitude of the time. But the thing is, I find that unfair. Same thing, Martin Luther King. We know he had affairs on his wife. We know Gandhi liked to sleep with young girls to try and test himself. People love to throw these things about our heroes, about heroic figures, but to me, it doesn't hurt them. To me, it makes them more human, and therefore, and flawed as we all are, that they yet, at least in some level, were able to step up to the game and step above their own self, and I respect that. As far as style. And some of them I admire for things, even the negative. We can actually admire negative things in people.
Yeah.
For instance, of course, I admire King Henry VIII. I mean, not the best king ever, but man, did he have style. Man, did he have an attitude. He was the king. And God's representative in his mind, and in that famous picture, it shows. And of course, I look like him. So, but. So I admire that. But I'll tell you, one man that I admire, and I'm actually doing it's ironic this come up because I'm actually doing a video on him probably this week. I admire people who can make a selfless sacrifice.
Yeah.
To me, that's stepping in a higher level. And there was a gentleman named Jonathan Daniels. I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
No,
probably
no.
not. He was a Episcopal priest, or actually he was a seminarian training to be an Episcopal priest back in the 60s. And he joined the Freedom Riders, people who went to the South to stop segregation and get black people to register for the vote. And while he was there, he was thrown in jail and with some followers. And when they got out of jail, he and two young black girls went to a store to get some sodas. A so-called deputy stepped forward, said they wouldn't go in the store, pointed a shotgun at him. Jonathan Daniels pushed the girl out of the way. He's aiming it at the girl, pushed her out of the way, and jumped in front of the shotgun and took the shot himself.
Wow.
Now I asked myself, for the person like that, could I do that?
A bit of self-sacrifice, yeah.
Could I, and it's a question I can answer. In that situation, would I push the girl out of the way and take the shot, knowing it will kill me? Will I stick to my principles and beliefs, and knowing that I'm going to lose my life and in a faith? Do I have that kind of faith in anything? To me, people like that is a hero on a level I can't comprehend. So someone like Jonathan Daniels, I admire.
It's a good one. I mean, for me, if I was to answer that, and it would, I mean, I'm a big fan, a huge admirer of the heroic period of polar exploration. And there's one character I've always looked up to, and that's one of the explorers called Sir Ernest Shackleton. And
Shackleton, yeah.
He was a very unsuccessful explorer because pretty much every expedition he went on didn't end up as he intended it to. But by all accounts, and I've read numerous books on his activities, he was a man who had enormous strength of character, personal self-confidence, and he was able to overcome really crappy situations and turn them into a success and save people in so doing. And he seemed to have an almost intuitive sense of leadership, and he was able to just seem to know the right thing to do at the right time. I really admire his sort of leadership style, but that's kind of quite deep. If you were going to ask me sartorially, who would I say I think is one of the most sartorially elegant men of all time? I think I would have to say Cary Grant. I think Cary Grant had a bit of a troubled life. I've read his autobiography, and he was quite an interesting fella. Married 4 times, never seemingly happy. But very unusual chap, had a quite a difficult childhood, very unpleasant childhood. But the thing that I find fascinating with Cary Grant is if you look at a picture, a media photograph of him that was taken in the 1950s when he was kind of in his prime, and you transpose that today to the modern world, he still looks elegant. There is no loss in the passage of time to the styles because he dressed in a timeless, elegant, simple way. And I think if you took Cary Grant, dropped him in the middle of London today or New York or any sort of large metropolitan city, he would not look out of place at all. And I think that's, all you can ask for with somebody when it comes to style, I think. And he leveraged it to positive effect as well. He knew he was a stylish man, and it was a very effective weapon for him as he went through life, I think.
Yeah, as far as sartorial style, I know David Nevin is a big one with you.
Mm.
For me, if you want to go, is actually a man that a lot of people have forgotten. His name was Sebastian Cabot, a fellow Brit with you, and he was famous for his voice, and he's most famous for playing Mr. French on a TV show called Family Affair back in the 60s, actually early 70s. He died in the late 70s. He's been a lot of times forgotten now, but he was a big man like me, but he dressed so well. Always. He was in an episode of The Twilight Zone, where he dressed in a full white suit. Now, a big white suit on a big man, that's bravery. And he rocked it. He looked perfect. He looked great. I really had a respect for him. He also had that his voice had a very resonant British voice, very smooth. He did the voice for Bagheera in the original Jungle Book. He was the original narrator for Winnie the Pooh. Yeah, so and he died in his late 50s, and I really hate that he's forgotten. But I didn't realize until I started watching that old show I hadn't seen since I was a child that I think subconsciously in my dress style itself, my own dress style, think deep down subconsciously I was emulating Mr. French, and you know what? I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that because if I dress half as well as he did, I'm a happy man. So
Yeah,
there's different types of heroes in life.
Oh, there is. And there's the deep sort of philosophical ones, and there's the ones who, putting on clothes doesn't make you a hero. I know that, but you can appreciate it and take pleasure and, inspiration from it, can't you? Anyway, one last question, because we've been
All
running
right.
for quite a while. And this one should be a quick one. It's from HF, your boy Will. And he asks, are there any tips on the use of a dress cane? Is there an age limit? What do you think? Because I know you've had an injury recently, and you've been using a cane for a little while. How did it
It's a
work out?
very kismet there that we brought that. It's well timed. Yes, I recently had some minor surgery on one of my on my leg, and I had to walk a little bit with a cane. And my answer to that is just like anything else within sartorial style, within lifestyle, is no, there is no limit. I mean, you don't have to carry a cane. Most men in the classical periods, when I tell you the classical periods, I'm talking about the turn of the 19th to the 20th century in the 1920, from about 1910 to 1920, the Edwardian period into the 20s. Men carried canes not because they had a limp, but it was a fashion statement. And I see, nothing wrong with carrying a cane as a fashion statement. I mean, to me, you can use it for walking, no different than using does anyone that uses everybody that uses a walking stick need a cane? No. So, if you want to walk with a cane for effect, and let me tell you, you can give great effect with a cane. You can use it to point, you can use it, to kind of stop the ground. And when you're making a point, it's a great, accessory. So, and I use it if you're from 18 to 90, so I think it's a great accessory to use. And it's your own personal choice. And that's another thing. I think it's good to experiment. We've talked about this before. Try things out, even if you think it may be a little unorthodox. Try it out and see. Maybe it's something you'll like. Maybe it's something you can start your own trend with. See how people react to it, how the public reacts to it. You're not going to know till you try. So, walk around, get you a good walking cane, a good stick with maybe a good brass end or something.
Yeah.
And it was some decoration.
It's
Hit the
interesting.
town, see what happens.
It's interesting. I mean, I have what I would say, the caveat to that is that, in the world that I inhabit, and I don't live in a metropolitan city, I live in a sort of, medium-sized town. It's an uncommon sight. And I think you are going to be a brave individual if you choose to carry a dress cane in a world where it is uncommonly seen, because, you run the risk of being identified as perhaps a little eccentric, or maybe a bit left of center, a bit avant-garde. But as you very
And
right,
here's the thing I'd say on that I don't see that as a caveat, because I mean, unless you're like doing something really out there, just bizarre out there, I think that showing a personal style is a little running a little opposite of the current makes you stand out, gives you looks, because not you're being looked at, you're being noticed.
True.
A thousand, if I stand in like a hat and a cane, and 50 people pass me, who are they going to remember? That 49 or me? They're going to remember me. I stand out. I don't say that's a bad thing. Even if they look at me a little odd, they're going to remember me. One, deep down, I don't care what they think if they don't like it. That's one. And number two, it's just like there's no such thing as bad publicity. There's no such thing as getting bad looks. You are being noticed and seen. You're standing out.
Absolutely.
But
I don't think I'm brave enough.
Be a goldfish in a bass pond.
I'm not brave enough yet. I think I've got to wait until I need one, I think. Anyway, Tim, I think we've rabbited on for quite a while here. So we're going to have to do this again. And
definitely. We're going to do a series of